lot of this is from your Twitter, okay? So you have you to thank for this. She's a professor and creator, CEO, vampire slayer, media innovator. No time to sleep, she'll do it later. Mia. We're talking about press and keeping it free. Can't overstress how important it is for you and me, Mia. Let's hear it for Mia Parrish.
So, really quickly, so I don't lose the momentum here, I just want to thank our keynote speaker, Mia Parrish. She is the former publisher of the Arizona Republic, and she is a distinguished professor at ASU and an expert on media and politics and all the things that I think a lot of us really are interested in. So please give her a round of applause.
I'm a little just verklempt, if anyone knows what that word is, over the ballotier, which I have never had anyone serenade me before. I'm very excited. I am kind of liking it, and I might have to, tweet that out to my not very many followers. You can come follow me. So I've been speaking a lot lately about the future of media and the state of democracy. It is almost certainly not because I am personally more popular or that the media is more popular, but it is certainly a popular topic. Recently, the Sandra Day O'Connor Institute asked specifically for me to come speak about this topic to their Young Leaders Network, and so it was about 200 professionals under 40 who are educated, engaged, interested, so similar to this audience, people who are willing to come out on a Saturday. This was a Tuesday night. And I asked them a series of kind of by a show of hands questions that I thought I would do with you as well. I'm curious to see if I got a similar set of answers, so you're awake, so you can play along with me. How many of you have a wireless subscription? Like you pay for a phone? Right. And it was all of them. How many of you subscribe to Netflix? Right. Amazon Prime? Have a fitness club membership? I didn't say whether you use it or not, because that, I pay for one, I just don't actually go. Hulu? Anyone? Some Hulu people? How many of you read news in any form daily? Right. And how many of you pay for news in any form? Yeah. So there are about 455 million wireless subscribers in the United States, about 150 million Netflix subscribers. There are 100 million Amazon Prime subscribers, 70 million Fitness Club subscribers, 28 million Hulu subscribers, and more than 110 million people consume news across a variety of platforms, but about 28 million pay in any form, print or digital, for news subscriptions. So you understand and are living my point, but I'll reiterate that it isn't that people don't pay for things that keep them connected, make them happier, smarter, more informed, amused. They're just not paying for media. And it isn't that they're not reading us. So it's not all bad news. They're interested. You are interested in knowing more and consuming more. And despite the fact that we are less popular than ever, there's research around this, they are reading us and they're consuming this news and information in a time of, I will call it, great madness and confusion. And we all know people are reading and that it matters, and I'll just give a little, okay, it's a political comment, but because the president just said that the government was going to cancel subscriptions to the New York Times and the Washington Post. So there is also a pay element of this. They're reading it, they're not really liking it, and they're saying we're going to part of the cancel culture to not subscribe and not pay for it. So let me be clear, my point of all of this is there is no true democracy without a well-funded free press, because there is no democracy without a well-informed electorate. And I say that because ignorance is a great, great weapon. And it is a tremendous weapon of tyranny. And it's a tremendous weapon against a true democracy. I have been touted as a trailblazer and apparently serenaded as a vampire slayer, which I'm sort of really loving today. But this room is full of trailblazers and pioneers and leaders who are seeking to do remarkable things in a time that's felt like an endless war. I know what it's like to lead in challenging times. I know what so many of you know, how hard it is. I know how tired you are. I know what keeps you up at night. I know personally what it's like to lay off valued employees by the dozen, to tell people who've worked on Christmas that they won't have a pension anymore. I know what it's like to feel actual physical anxiety about the health of our democracy. And I know how hard people in media have worked to innovate, to seek and keep new audiences, to keep people informed, to sell more, to reimagine, to try to catch a wave or even catch a break, because they need to believe that what we do is going to be reached and make a difference in the communities that we serve. I know what it's like to think, I've finally done enough. I spent 12 years as a publisher in a very, very difficult climate. I know what it's like to think, I have done enough to make a difference, and then realize that it still wasn't enough. I wasn't fast enough. I wasn't aggressive enough. I wasn't creative enough. I didn't bring enough people along with me to keep up with the viciousness of a cyclical and secular challenge that hit our entire industry and has affected our political process and has affected the communities that we serve. I also remember a time before all of it. I remember the thrill of my first byline, my first press pass, my first newspaper job that paid a magnificent sum at the time of $375 a week. I was so proud. And I had to share a place because I didn't have enough money for my own rent. But I also remember the moments of triumph, and of grace and of enlightenment, of flat-out pride of being part of something so precious that it's enshrined in the Bill of Rights. I remember the moments when we didn't back down from lying politicians, withstood bomb threats, fought for sick children, and helped change bad policies and raised millions for charity, and took on corruption. When we've spread joy and wonder and uplifted each other in dark times. So I also know this, that when I look out at all of you, I am inspired, and I have a sense of hope. Because despite all the challenges, the heartbreak, the are you kidding me moments and days and weeks and years, you are here today with me because you're still trying to figure this out and because you still care about the communities that we serve, and you care to help us have a healthy democracy. Being here today and thinking about the future of journalism and democracy and having clean elections, I thought I'd share just a little bit about what inspires me to try to keep trying to figure this out when it is tremendously hard. I'm the daughter of a war refugee. She grew up under an occupying dictatorship with no right to a free press, no right to free speech, no right to vote, no right to an education. I'm the niece of a human rights activist who was put on a death list for more than a decade by a dictator for advocating for democracy on behalf of enslaved women in a nation without a right to peaceably assemble or petition the government for redress of grievances. She was only released from house arrest when the dictator was assassinated in a military coup. It's in my lifetime. I am the granddaughter of a pastor who was imprisoned and nearly tortured to death in a land without freedom of religion. He was willing to die for the right to be able to preach his belief in Jesus. He was only released when they felt that he would be tortured to death and die in that prison and become a martyr. He and all of them were remarkable people. They fought for freedoms and privileges for those around them, for those who couldn't speak up for themselves. They sacrificed for me and my cousins and my sister to be here, and for me to be here today with all of you, to have the right to say those things, to speak against a government, to speak our mind, to say things that are unpopular. I was raised with a reverence for the First Amendment, of democracy, an understanding of its preciousness, of its value, of its fragility. I was raised to be a journalist, as it turns out. They probably would have preferred me to be a doctor, would have made more money and have been less controversial. It's okay. But on a day that you're contemplating the possibilities ahead and the challenges that you're working through, I felt like sharing that story of why it is that I do what I do and why it is that I have worked for so long and continue to. Not for what it says about me, but what I think it says about all of us, that what we are isn't about the hand that we're dealt. It's about what we do with it. So, growing up, I first heard those family stories, the core of my own conscience, as I learned about the good and the ill of the world through the pages of my hometown newspaper, the Washington Post. I was raised, as you might imagine, by kind of activists and advocates. Instead of going to soccer on Saturday, we used to go and protest dictators in front of the White House. I was like little teeny tiny fairy protester with the, dorky. Lafayette Square. Anyone from DC? So we'd go and protest and march against the Shah, and we would march against Park Chung-hee, and we would, And what I realized in retrospect is how incredibly fortunate I was, and how very grateful I am to have been brought up in a place where I could do that, and brought up by people who found who understand and understood and passed along to me and to my sister. The importance of that. It made me want to make a difference, which I believe I share with the people in this room who are here on a beautiful Saturday, to be part of something courageous and something meaningful. And it made me want to be a better person for those around me. In the last decade, more than 1,300 local newspapers have ceased to exist. And the vast majority of them are in places in between here and there. They're in the middle, in all of these communities, in all of these towns. Hundreds of local communities no longer have a news source. They're effectively news deserts, places that have no local coverage. And for them, what they hear and what they see is not the news that affects them on a local level, and does not help inform them to make good decisions about who will be their elected leaders, how they will vote to make things that will change and affect the communities that they live in. What does that look like? Even in a metro the size of Phoenix, which has, when I first worked here in 1999, there were almost 400 people in the newsroom at the Arizona Republic. 400 people, which seemed like a reasonable amount at the time, I have to say. We're like, oh yeah, didn't seem like a lot, it seemed like a good amount. There are just about 100 there today. 100 journalists, there's a quarter of the journalists in about 20 years. And I don't see that getting so much better anytime soon. But what does it look like when we're not there? Doctors injure and kill people through malpractice and negligence, and they keep practicing. Corrupt businesses bilk customers with impunity. Taxpayer money isn't watched for keen management. We also aren't there to celebrate, to lift up, to inform, to question, to provide context. And look, I get that it's not fun to be covered. Has anyone in here been covered by the press? I have, more than once. It's not always fun. And I get that it isn't fun. It isn't fun to be questioned, it isn't fun to be FOIA'd, it's aggravating, all of those things. And there's a reason that I am not popular at Thanksgiving, really not popular at Thanksgiving, even though I bake some amazing pies. But Anyway, I try, but it's the corn and the corn pudding. They still just like give me a load of crap. But the driving force of what I've done for my whole career is to seek truth and report it. And the truth is not always popular. And the code of ethics for journalists for decades has been that journalists should be honest, fair, and courageous in gathering, reporting, and interpreting information. I never quite understood that courageous part until the last couple of years. I always felt proud about it, but it's become a bigger issue to be able to stand up and to be able to be supported, to say the things that are unpopular, to say the things that are true and honest and fair, even if they are controversial and dangerous. I think I mentioned before that we don't do it for popularity, and we don't do it for money, and we don't do it for fame. And not only has the work gotten less popular and less lucrative and more infamous than famous, it is more stressful and it is more dangerous. It has also become more important, and important to keep in perspective, and important to remember what's at stake when you're in that sort of maw of this difficultness. How many of you are on Twitter? That'd be everybody, right? I'm considering a Twitter ban for myself because it's causing me a lot of anxiety. But it really does help remind me of why we are all here on a Saturday, of the perspective around that. One of my favorite reminders is a story of my nephew Thomas, who is wise beyond his years and a great, great student of history. He teaches me things all the time, and really ask him about Bulgaria and World War I. I can't even. But when he was 7, I sent him to Star Wars Lego camp, because I actually also thought it'd be good for him to get out around other kids, because he's kind of a geek. So I asked him how it was, he's 7 and you love Star Wars and it's Lego and what's not to like, it's camp. And he says to me, "Oh, Auntie Mia, that's okay. And he's not an ungrateful kid. I can give him a book about, the worst weapons of World War II, and he thinks that's super cool. So Star Wars Lego camp, he was like, meh. So I asked him why he thought that this was not the best, wasn't all that fun to go there. And he said, Star Wars Lego camp is kind of like Russia. Really? Star Wars Lego camp is kind of like Russia. And he's like, yeah, those counselors, they're a lot like Putin. I love this kid so much. I really do. I love him. So, tell me more about this baby. It's like Russia, and they're like Putin. And he's like, yeah, the counselors spend all their time keeping everyone in line and telling the kids to be quiet and stop doing things that are fun. All righty. And he said, you know what, Auntie Mia, freedom is messy. Freedom is really messy. And I thought, yes, Thomas, good gracious, freedom is really messy, and democracy is really messy, right? And right now, democracy is especially messy. And I think of that when things get hard. I think of it, frankly, when I look at Twitter, and I thought of it as I was coming here to talk to you today about a healthy democracy and its challenges and its privileges, because Thomas, at 7, was wiser than some of us are, because without freedom, life would be a whole lot more orderly. It would be quieter, mostly, but it definitely wouldn't be better. Thomas noted that it wasn't as much fun, and I would argue that it isn't as worthwhile, and it is a whole lot messier to have freedom. It's pretty clear that we're in a messy time. It's a time of turbulence and discord and divisiveness and polarization. A little over 3 years ago, I was involved in a micro moment of this. Some of you are probably familiar. When I was president and publisher of the Arizona Republic, and like many newspapers, the Republic was founded as a partisan paper. Most newspapers actually were party papers. There's the Democrat and Chronicle. The Arizona Republic itself was the Arizona Republican until 1930. It is one of the most staunchly conservative metro newspapers in the country, and it was in fact, I think it might have been the only metro newspaper that had never endorsed a Democrat for president. We couldn't find any others. But many of you know that in 2016, the editorial page, and that was me and some other people, but mostly me, decided to endorse a Democrat for president for the first time in its history. And there were a lot of reasons that went into that, and I've talked a lot about that, and I'm happy to answer questions about that, and it's fine if you disagree with me about that, because I've been called names that none of you in this room could imagine. And I probably can't repeat because I'm being recorded. So anyway, but I'd been a journalist at that point for decades, and I had been a projects and investigations reporter. I had been an actual journalist in that time, not just a business person. And so I had been involved in a lot of important, controversial, difficult work. We'd unmasked lying, corrupt politicians, bad doctors who were not happy about us telling people that they were bad doctors, incompetent and corrupt police officials. And I had been on the receiving end of tens of thousands of emails from extremely angry Catholics who didn't like that I'd called for the resignation of a bishop who'd protected and defended a known pedophile priest who reoffended at a parish elementary school. Like, I know what this looks like. I have been there. I'd had death threats and stalkers and more than one encounter with the FBI and Homeland Security by the time that we decided that we would endorse a Democrat for the first time. Now, let me also say we endorsed pretty much everybody else we endorsed was a Republican, but we did endorse a Democrat for president. So I thought I was prepared, but I had never seen the kind of vitriol. I had never seen the kind of bile. I had never experienced and been on the receiving end of the kind of vile examples of evil over expressing an opinion with which some people disagreed. An opinion. An opinion. They came for the people, not just me, because it's fine. Call me, don't dox me, but like, okay, I get it. Threaten me, call me names, post pictures of my car on the internet. But we had people threatening to kill the children of the editor of the newspaper. I mean, people who called and said, you don't have kids, but the editor does. She has 3. She should watch out. Like, she should be worried about her children. We know where they go to school. Like, people in America. So I was not prepared for that. I wasn't prepared for the people who were menacing kids going door to door, selling subscriptions, and threatening to sick dogs on people who were taking photos at soccer games because they were working for us. And as I said before, hating the press isn't a new thing. Like, we're used to this, but it has accelerated. It is growing, and it is metastasizing, and it is very dangerous. It's dangerous for us. I don't mean as a journalist, I mean for us as Americans. I talk to my students about this, and I talk about this a lot. Like, why are we so hated? Because I'm actually pretty nice. Like, you would want to have Thanksgiving with me, and I will put up with you saying nasty things about me over my pie. But we're really pretty nice. But there are some key reasons, and I think it's important to be aware that the 4 main reasons are a general and growing disregard for institutions. It's a pretty well-researched thing. There was a shrinking and then an expanding choice of information. And there's a lot of chaos that has come with that. Frankly, I think the media has a lot of skin in this game. I think the media's arrogance and disconnect with its communities has fed a lot of this, and I think we haven't been great and agile learners, and we take responsibility in that. And I think it's really something that we don't talk enough about. And then really the specific and very pointed and very particular attacks on the media from politicians. It's a really, really dangerous thing. So why do we put up with this? Why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep coming and standing on a Saturday? Actually, you guys are all like nice. I go and talk to people who aren't as interested in actually helping a democracy. But why get engaged? Why should you get engaged in something that is a headache at the very least, and heartache in so many ways, and sometimes dangerous? Because I also, through all of this, have come to know this, that I love democracy, and so do all of you. For me, that meant being a journalist. For journalists are a funny breed. We are not motivated by fame or money, and we definitely don't do it because we want to be popular. I love that we are watchdogs and storytellers, and that we are advocates and innovators, business strategists, and community leaders. We are friends and neighbors and fathers and mothers and sons and daughters. We help connect readers to the world and to the communities that we serve. We seek to inform, to enrich, to enlighten, to unite. We care about righting wrongs, and we care about shining light in dark places. We care about tragedies and triumphs. We want our leaders to do right by us. We want safe, healthy neighborhoods. We want local businesses to succeed so our communities can thrive. We want all this because our communities are our communities as well. We believe in celebrating successes, and we care about people who have done the incredible and the people who have been forgotten. We believe in second chances, and we believe in kindness, and we believe in truth. I believe in journalism, and I believe in all of you in helping our democracy be healthy. I believe that together we will figure this out, and frankly, I believe because of all of you looking out across this room. I believe in that because it's never been more important, and I believe that together we will figure this out. And I'm heartened by what you do, and I'm heartened to be here today. And I am thankful for all that you'll do to make our communities better, safer, stronger, more informed, and more engaged. So thank you for being here, and thank you for asking me to be with you today. Got a waving arm. I said I would take questions. I'm happy to. Do you have a question? Or, yes.
Everybody else. Do you know the organization called the Committee to Protect Journalism?
I do. Mm-hmm.
Are you involved with that?
I am. The Committee to Protect Journalists, they've been really busy lately, actually. You know, frankly, I mean, it's become an accelerating problem, not just in the United States, but it's become much more dangerous to be a journalist in the world, given what's going on here.
Why is it that we don't hear? I mean, I wrote to them several times. I think that, I mean, why is it that we don't hear more often on this? And why is it that the Committee to Protect Journalism is not asking the public or do an event where the people of this country, United States, that we go out and do something? I feel that they are very silent, or maybe they are working behind the scenes, but I do feel that it needs to be an organization of the people, an event where we say no more, you know. Is there any body that does that?
There are elements of that, but journalists aren't actually particularly great at telling their own story and defending themselves. We're not used to having to do that. We're used and not used to really reporting on themselves. I should have said when we did the endorsement in 16, and we got a lot, like thousands and thousands of nasty calls, thousands and thousands of emails, and many death threats. I won't say thousands, many death threats and threats. I wrote about it a couple weeks later, which I had never done before. Like, I never report, you know, like the thing with the Catholics, like I didn't write about that. I didn't tell people I got these death threats and I had to get the FBI involved. Like, we're not used to actually reporting about ourselves. But in that case I did, because I couldn't, it was unusual in that they were threatening people I couldn't protect. You know, it's one thing if you want to like threaten me, but you know, you're threatening those kids who are going door to door and our photographers and stuff. And I wrote about it. When I did that, tens of thousands of people wrote us saying that they supported journalism. So what you're speaking to, there are many people, and they send cookies and pizza and flowers and, you know, I'm so sorry notes. And so when we do talk about it, so you're right, when we do talk about it, there are, I would say, more people, or there were certainly many people who were in support of a free press and support the First Amendment and understand the value of journalism. But it is popular to hate on us, which, you know, that's, so yes, I will pass that along. I think that's a really good suggestion. Are there other questions? Other, just like, No? Oh, there's a question over there. Hi. So sorry. Shout it on out.
Hi. There we go. Yes. So I think there's a difference, and I think that we don't always recognize the difference between the media and journalism.
Sure.
And
yeah.
there is a lot of vitriol happening, and I think that's because media is funded by vitriol, right? Like the clickbait and the things that the emotional response that they need to garner in order to get us to engage with media. This might be a really big, broad question, but as an industry professional, do you have ideas for journalism and how they could maybe take back some of that landscape and to own the integrity of journalism?
Yes, I have a magic button. No, that's such a good and thoughtful question. I fall victim myself to talking about the media, and there is not the media, right? Like we're not all the same, and it's not all one thing, and I don't speak for everybody. And you're right. And really, what I'm talking more about is journalism, and while I do want local journalism in forms that you will get it to continue, I'm agnostic about how you get it. So, like, I'm not against the technologies that help proliferate the news and information. But there is a very serious credibility gap, and some of this is of our own making. I don't know how much you follow Facebook and what Mark Zuckerberg's been talking about lately. He's threading a really careful needle. He doesn't want to be a publisher because he doesn't want to be held to the standards of journalism, but he also wants to be a media company and proliferate the information. There's a difference between those things, and journalism hasn't done a good job. A journal, frankly, has been under siege, so it's expensive. It's expensive to sue people who lie. It's expensive, really, to go after some of the outlets that talk about themselves as media. Controversial thing. I think lawyers should be involved at this point. I really do. I don't have the ability to do that, but I think when you have outlets that are considered media that say things like Ebola might be on its way north with migrants. Like, wait, I don't get to say that kind of crap in a news. Like, you don't get to, somebody should call you on that. It's dangerous, right? But we just are in so much chaos that the ability to do that, to fight that. There's also a very strong tradition of both siderism that we fall prey to, and I think there's some element of laziness with that. But that I think has been dangerous and I think has not served us well. So I jokingly say it's like you just say like Hitler said this, Churchill said that, you figure it out. Yeah, like that's not responsible, right? And we're seeing more and more of that, or the idea that like this person, you had 3 climate scientists or whatever. Now I've got to find 3 flat Earth people to disagree with them, even if they don't know what they're talking about. That's dangerous, So we have skin in that game. In figuring out how to, in being more aggressive in that. And we have not been aggressive, and I think we're in a time where we need to be much more aggressive, and that has not been in our nature, to defend ourselves, to be aggressive about it, to defend the craft, to defend the credibility. So anyway, long way of answering your, I don't know. We're trying to.
Expounding on that, the fact that the media can be entertainment.
Sure.
That I think would be the legal issue where they have to take that back. You're held to when you were with the Republic, newsprint is held to a different standard.
We are, and broadcast is as well. Technically speaking, like there could be in violation of actual laws. Do I have any lawyers in the room? There are FCC violations that are occurring all the time that they're just not being dealt with. And some of that, like my Twitter handle is Publisher Parrish. We were just joking about this, and I'm very, very pro-publish. Like, I am not a censorship person. Like, there's a very high bar for me for going after media, for going after free speech. Like, when I was a publisher, I published a lot of letters to the editor that I was like, oh, I don't agree with that. But we have come to a time, I came to a time where I was like, okay, there's some stuff that just isn't. You've got to start using your brain for that. And we have not quite gotten to that place, I'm afraid. And I'm not in charge. There are violations that are happening. There just isn't anybody who's dealing with it.
Specifically, to me, that they allowed Fox News, that they had to change the laws to say, okay, it's entertainment now that news channels are speaking.
And this isn't just the cable news. It's happening all. It's being abused in all number of ways by all manners of bad actors. Certainly. I teach this now too. So I teach students who are like, Alex Jones should be able to say whatever he wants on Twitter. I'm like, nope, don't agree. You can say whatever you want. Doesn't mean there aren't consequences. Doesn't mean Twitter has to allow you the bullhorn of Twitter. But we weren't in that place before. The technology and how people consume news and how it's paid for has caused and exacerbated a lot of these problems that we don't have a mechanism. We don't have laws to be able to deal with it. We've got 1902 laws for a 2020 kind of world, so it makes it, we don't know what we're doing quite yet. One and then in the back.
So kind of going back to the first question,
What was it?
besides like subscribing and reading the news, like what
Please
else?
subscribe. Yes. Somehow.
What else can we do to like help support journalists and journalism in general?
So do subscribe. And the funny thing, my little quiz on the front side, news outlets stink at this. It's on us. We've made it really, really easy for people not to pay. You can't get Amazon Prime unless you pay for it. You can't just get free delivery. But somehow we will give you our stuff that we paid a lot of money and effort to do it. So do that. Do be informed. Use credible sources. It's not your responsibility, but I do think it is appreciated when you call people on their crap. There's some of that too. I think that it's going to take all of us. It's going to take more participation and using, valuing, helping support credible sources. And I know people are exhausted. Even my students are like, I can't tell who's a good source. I'm like, yes, you can. Cut it out. There are, and it doesn't involve always agreeing with exactly how they did the thing. That conflating or equalizing or normalizing some of the crazy, don't help not normalize the crazy, I would think too. And some of it's just small stuff. It's being a good egg, being here, participating, spreading the word. That's a good thing, I think. It helps. All of those things help. Sometimes it thinks it doesn't, but they do. There was somebody in all the way in the back. Blue maybe, and then I think you had your hand up first in all the way in the back.
How do editorial boards go into making a political endorsement? Because
Sure.
It's not like Planned Parenthood or a Chamber of Commerce. There's a list of issues that you can check off. That candidate supports us, that one doesn't. How do you go into that?
It does sort of. So, so I was a publisher in 3 markets, varying size, small, medium, large, and I'm a big believer in doing endorsements. And not everybody is. People are getting more, organizations are getting more and more away from them. One of the reasons that I'm a big believer in it is we would sit down with every single candidate. So first we would have them fill out, where are you on these various issues? Where are you on whatever? Pick a thing, whatever. Education funding, whatever. And then we would sit down and meet with every single candidate in these races. So part of that was the privilege of us being able to question them, and which individual voters can too, and then give voters information about that. Now, our decision making was against a set of criterion that we would be transparent about it. We believe in funding public education, therefore, and this person's history is in funding in public education, or not. So we would base our endorsements on that.
Okay.
Which was similar to how we based the endorsement in 2016 in the presidential election. A lot of that had to do with border issues and, NAFTA and things that were important to Arizona. In addition to the fact that we felt he was unfit, but that's my own political comment on that. But more and more, you are seeing, but it is very costly. It's time costly as well to do that. So you're going to see less and less of it, which I think is a shame. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
That one, I mean, and the Trump-Clinton thing was unusual. Usually there's a really particular process, but that one that was an unusual set of circumstances that I had to override to make that happen. Other questions? There was somebody, yes ma'am? In the political arena? In the political arena? I mean, certainly the most disheartening was was people threatening to kill, photographers at soccer games because, or calling up, like, the accounts receivable department. Like, these poor little accounting clerks are getting called and told that people are going to, like, shoot them when they walk to the parking lot because they don't like Hillary Clinton. I mean, terribly, terribly disheartening. And then certainly heartening when I wrote about it. And I mean, I have piles of letters and things from people, but people in Australia and Canada and, all over the country writing and saying, we support you and your journalists, and people who, had no reason to, would subscribe digitally or whatever because they wanted to support what we were doing. So I think probably that whole thing was, and I've done a lot of things, but yeah, when somebody called and said that they were going to blow up blow up cars of our reporters, what? I mean, it's just, I didn't recognize us anymore. I didn't recognize our country anymore. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit what does that organization do, the Committee to Protect Journalism, when you're telling us all these stories? Because I don't hear anything, and I'm pretty involved and get a lot of emails. And I'm on their email list, so I
they
don't
need to
get
do
any
more.
information.
Yeah, I'm not actually on their board or anything, so I'll go talk to them about that. And again, realistic, they have tended to support journalists in foreign countries because we have not been. I mean, people haven't tried to kill us. Like, journalists in Mexico, dozens and dozens of them have been killed in the last couple of years. Killed, not just threatened with death. I mean, that's one of the reasons I didn't used to write about it. It's hyperbolic or complaining or whatever to be in that place. But we are in that place now. Like what happened at the Annapolis Capitol, they killed them because they were journalists. They killed them because, that guy killed them because he didn't like them. And I think he was encouraged in that. And that's an unusual. So they're, sort of to your point, I mean, they weren't prepared. They haven't been prepared to have to protect us. And they need to, and they haven't been fast in shifting to that. Yeah. You would think. We have really, really been slow. It's kind of ridiculous on a lot of fronts, not just that one. Yeah, I don't think we've learned fast enough how to handle the environment that we're in. Are we good? Yep. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mia.
Absolutely.